introduce it to my clients, I am. So I did a demo recently on Breeze and how to use Copilot, and it was you could tell just by like the non-reaction, so to speak. Because usually when I do a demo, there's just question after question, there's comment after comment in the chat, and that typically means that like people have an understanding, but they want to know more, or they have like very little understanding, and they're trying to get me to slow down. And in this case, it was like barren, and
Oh,
all that told me was just like, oh, it can do this. We can do this. You can do this inside the portal. Like, whoa, wow. Um, and unfortunately, it was real short, but it's definitely something that people, when they see it, they they don't really have an understanding just yet. I can honestly say that myself and a developer friend that I work with and talk to, we've both been saying that people are nearly woefully asleep, uh, even within the marketing sphere. I would say, even though when polled, marketing was the number one industry in which generative AI was being used, it's being used from a content perspective
mm-hmm.
primarily, and it's being used from a strategy perspective somewhat. But there is this holdback of, yes, these tools are awesome, and yes, they're great, and yes, I can possibly, I think maybe a year or two from now, I could stop using GPT and then maybe and use just Copilot instead. I don't see it happening, but it's possible. Um, but even that being the case, going forward with how this works, it's like, yeah, there's this daunting thing where you have to eventually cope with the fact that it is going to help you come up with this strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's going to be pretty good because the strategy is based on your CRM data. So, one of the things that I look at, and I'm not entirely sure how the rest of the ecosystem feels about this, especially the agency ecosystem. I love and want to ask these questions to everyone. I started asking 6 months ago, but people did not want to answer, and I don't think they want to answer still. You know, we, most of us, we have textbooks, we have playbooks, we have all this stuff. We've got spreadsheets, everything from mapping out everything that's in the portal. Okay, well, now you have lead scoring AI automated. I don't have to I don't have to dock that anymore. I don't even have
Mm-hmm.
to ask you. I just boop, and then we see what it comes up with. And maybe, like, hopefully your data is super clean. And now, even in terms of data being super clean, now I've got Breeze Intelligence. I've got something built in, so I can start cleaning up my data. No problem. Prospecting. Oh, okay. All my prospecting is done for me through reverse IP lookup, form strategy. Most of my form strategy is now taken care of. Reverse IP lookup. All of that backfill data is coming in without, without said person even really having to make the effort in order to put it in for you. BOFU
Mm-hmm.
forms start to just shrink and almost go away. It gets to be to the point where even when it comes to not only lead health score, but also lead fit. So you can actually see not only lead fit, but also company fit. Um, it really starts to go in so many directions that from a admin perspective, it becomes more about the theology. It becomes more about the philosophy. I don't want to say theology, but it's kind of that. Because you believe in a system that works. You believe in a methodology that works. So it is a little bit, that's anyway.
Yeah.
But it is definitely the application of that philosophy towards, okay, here's why this methodology works with your business, and here's why these parts are moving in this particular way, right?
Yeah. And,
But
and
as
I think
time
it's
goes on, the strategy aspect of it, due to all the data being there and due to the language model being there and being able to qualitatively reason and understand the relationships between it all, what happens when it comes back with the exact same strategy I do, or a better one than I was thinking of? So
and that
there's a daunting aspect. There's a divide that I think people also struggle with.
I agree. And I think there's something to be said about the kind of tool, like the application you're using it for. And I think flipped it to your point of like where it starts coming back with a stronger strategy or an equal one to where you're looking at, I think that's where, there's two things to consider. One, I know we started having this conversation last week about just the categories and levels of intelligence and what that looks like, which I'm excited to talk about here. But the other thing is where it's being applied to, because the thing that's really cool about Breeze and the use in HubSpot now is that it is very niche and built specifically for HubSpot to help you action things that you're doing within the portal versus other tools, again, like we mentioned here, you need to provide it all of the context before you can start working on anything that's actually valuable. And so that's why, I know you have Helper Harry going on. That's why that is so helpful and successful. It's because all that content is already built in. Versus if I were to just go and say, hey, I have this question about HubSpot, I type it into insert AI tool here, but I haven't provided any context about what portal tier I'm using, what my
Right.
end goal is, whether or not I'm even using HubSpot, because it may use different terminology and may think that while I'm talking about HubSpot, maybe I'm doing something for like ActiveCampaign or Marketo or something like that.
Yeah.
And that foundational resource knowledge and library of information is really huge and important. And that gets better and better as you start niching down in categories. And it's the same kind of thing as like when you go into business. Like when you start building a company, most of the time you tend to be more successful when you focus down on a narrow sphere of influence and a narrow audience, and then you broaden from there. Versus if you just cast a wide net, there's going to be a lot of confusion of, okay, how can you work with, for example, like banking and accounting when your history tells me that you've only worked in like gaming and entertainment industry? Like they're not, like the lexicon's different, the approach is different, the strategy is different. But it's only after you've been doing that across different industries for several years that you can understand how it all meshes together, what a certain approach looks like in one market versus another market, and how they are the same, how they're different, and take it all from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because we were just looking at this morning the relationship between the level of reasoning on models given a particular test, a particular variation in a test.
Mm-hmm.
And what really stood out to me out of everything on it was the fact that it was a consistency of 7 billion parameter models that were getting better and better and better and better.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this scaling theory that the more, I mean, obviously it's still there to me, but I think part of it has fallen off. I think the aspect of putting more compute behind it, sure. But I think the aspect of having to put more data in, not so much. I think we have, and it's actually not we have, it's months ago, but it's publicly catching up that, yeah, if we refine the type of data that we give it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's more like if we stop using the US version of trying to teach people math and we use one that's actually effective that they can actually retain,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then it's actually a better way and we actually understand how to retain and use math, right? So you can have all the same data that, we talk about it in school all the time, that you have the same data sets, but people learn differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody absorbs it in a different way. And if you try to use a singular method of doing it, it doesn't necessarily work. So yeah, as time goes on, to your point, it's like, yeah, these models are only going to, and that's all it does. It's all this technology does.
Mm-hmm.
All it knows how to do is get better. And it, on top of which, its primary objective is to become more efficient.
Right.
With every iteration.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, I don't see a world in which we're working with, massive models. I think Neil Ashenbrenner was talking about it earlier this year that by probably like June next year, somebody will be able to spin up a GPT-4 the same way that I spin up a custom GPT, right? And you'll be able to do it off your desktop because it'll only take, very minimal resources to run by next year as opposed to what it takes to run it this year, right?
Exactly. But I think to your point on that, there's a lot to be said about the driver versus the tool, because this is an important thing to remember, and something that I like using an analogy is all these different when you use this analogy, you can just kind of look at you as the user being the person managing the tools, or being the handy person who's actually building whatever it is that you're building. And the GPT, the different GPTs are tools, they're your drill, they're your saws, they're your hammers. They do different things and are used in different contexts. But unless you know how to use them, and in what order, and how to actually combine them together, that's where you kind of start having that potential blurred line. And that's
Here
where you
we go.
start getting into this philosophy of intelligence, of just okay, well, what is intelligence? And is it the ability to take all these things and execute, or is it the ability to look at that higher level approach and combine it across the understanding of how, not even the when or how to do this, because theoretically you can do that with a tool, but why and when do you apply it?
Yes, that level, which comes with reasoning, right? So that level of
Yes.
reasoning is still slightly out of reach. I don't think it's too far away. Dario Amodei just said not too long ago that it's very possible that we'll have artificial general intelligence sometime in 2026, which Ray Kurzweil was saying 8 months ago that it was going to be 2028. So this all makes a lot of sense to me because of the fact that it's on an exponential curve. So the secondary part of what people struggle with is just think about the fact that we're talking about technological revolution, or evolution, really. What we're going through is a technological revolution. In my opinion, this is the second digital revolution. The first one was essentially actually this is the third, if you think about it. First was computers, second was internet, and third now is AI. Cell phones are just a hardware thing.
Cell phones are like social media. They're a tool that leverage other. They leverage these things in order to help for convenience.
And because if you think, and the reason I say that is because computers were fundamental to that workspace. The internet was fundamental. It was a utility of the workspace, and AI is a utility now as it stands. It's going to be in everything. So it's like electricity. You can't, you're in 4 years, it'll be really hard to find a piece of electronics that doesn't have it in there. And if it does, it's going to be weird and people are going to look at you funny, something like that. Right. So to me, it's weird. It's only crazy to me because I'm on that scale. So I'm already like a year and a half, 2 years from here. And it's like, yeah, okay, we don't have that now, but when we do, so just because now, okay, O1 preview is smarter than 3 different types of PhDs. Okay. The next iteration of this thing, which try to keep in mind, we only have Claude 3.5 Sonnet. We don't even have 3.5 Opus. That's not Claude 4, which would be what would be measured against O1. People don't take into account the fact that O1 is short for Orion, not Strawberry. It would be really ridiculous to start your model with O and then call it S. I could be wrong. It would be awesome to be wrong. It would be weird, but it would be awesome. Strawberry, from what I understand, trained Orion. So there's the other thing to think about, which is that these models are already at a point where they can generate synthetic data that's accurate and high quality enough that they can train on. So we're past the point of needing human input in order to train a model. We are past the point of potentially being better than a PhD holder. And we're soon, I mean, give it a year. Just give it 1 year from last year. Last year, it was like barely better than a high schooler. This year, it beat a PhD level person, 3 different PhD level people. Next year, it's over. Next year, it's over. It's 100% accuracy with the smartest intelligence on the planet. Okay,
but the important thing is how to use it.
how to use it, yeah, I mean, for sure, but like, yeah, when it's applied. So like when you take this, it's like you said, these are, it's the underlying model, part of the underlying model to co-pilot. Now they say HubSpot, they have their own proprietary model as well. I'm not sure if that's any different from the others. I know it's for me. I don't that will talk build do model. You know, basically time it's not even like something no thing. You know, like for help, they're all if the case of the model is relevant, it's always do the most underlying for 1 year now, if you a code HubSpot as uses the powered by really didn't have to be it's just a seriously intelligent that understands can build out strategize probably better than people think would never with better.
Yeah. Parts of you find value. It's going to today. And that's one time. How does that work? Yeah, that's right. Again, we talk about for or can I break into G? And that's a right. They don't go really. So like have to add if I wanted to that versus doing so in 1 year. Think out what their business spot.
In speak to the next phase business operation because for your CRMs are becoming like back in 6 years ago concept marketing started adopting the team. Now that status that can say look technology but business download, having the various devices come took off. Bots being coined. There's been operations to kind of like revenue because revenue operates ultimately like revenue while and aligning sales with your customer facing support is good or making them stay happy. This is where it's going and more business operation. And this is looking at everything. And this is making sure you are doing everything you need to do with that strategy. But the tool itself. Like for argument's sake, itself, paying attention to your project management or Asana or as well as using to a workspace or your internal chat using finance and account platform, even headhunting, like talent acquisition, and any systems that fall within the main categories that's sales, support, like it's accounting, it's finance, IT, it's human operations. It's going to be understanding all of those tools where they all plug into the ecosystem, and similar to how you see everything about data mapping tool, where it all interacts with each other. So you can look at more approach and understand based off of this is where we need to go. And then you kind of provide that text over to the tools that you're using, and the tools are going to execute them. And that's going to be our next step. And it's going to be less about being focused on everything that's boots around work execution, and more about coming up with the overall strategy of like adoption deployment. Because right now, look at how much quicker HubSpot onboarding takes. And 4 or 5 years ago, you wanted to do marketing plus sales onboarding. You work with a client in 3 to 6 months. That's just what it is because it takes. You do that, you can do that combination in 8 weeks now. No problem at all. Because so much of these things, like lead scoring, for example, are automated. You no longer need to fully evaluate client, understand what the criteria are, put it together, and then actually build the thing out with a bunch of workflows.
Yeah. If you're involved, it would be done today. Like 6 to 8 weeks. Just getting on the same page. Talking so much, which is it's going to be interesting. And on this, Nico, so I know question: what do we do with 10 pairs of boots around?
The 10 boots on the ground become 100 on the ground. People are looking at this and they're okay. You're talking about is automating a weight job. I'm like, no, because even though like you're heavy lifting, even though you don't have to move with your hands anymore, it's a direct thing. So literally, you can think of next year as being a transition to Mickey Mouse and Fantasia holding the directing the buckets and mops and everything, and where everything is how it's supposed to work and how things should be working together. You're going to be working this, agentic system where just part of your workflow is your ability of being able to direct something else that goes and does and performs all these tasks for you. So you can't really do that if you don't know the job necessarily, right? You're shooting in the dark. So, off of something I would say is like, yeah, you can sort of do onboarding now. Like a lot of the companies don't have onboarding in place. It's like a gimme. It's like a freebie at this point because it's like, oh, well, yeah, just use if you have any questions. Right. So that does help, and it definitely gives you a leg up in terms of being able to things. But it's not going to be at the rate of somebody that's doing it, that understands what they're doing, that understands what's happening, understands the cycle of things, and the way that the winds might right to date on current events. The thing that most people don't take into account is what Bryan was saying. These models are trained. Talking to somebody that was like, "Hey, I'm a method of doing live." I was like, it's an interesting question, but I think that's the thing. Like, I don't think you would want that to be a thing. And they were like, "Why not?" Well, because you would be getting live access to information, right? And then you're updating it on the back end, and you really don't know what's happening. So you're not really sure what type of data at any point in time. And so realistically, anytime you set these models up, you're giving it a set amount of information, right? Like you're starting data from Copilot, and it's at a particular time. Copilot is unique in that it is actually able to continue to update along with what's going on in your CRM. And being able to leverage like web against that makes it easier. So again, like you're just capable of doing more within the portal now as a sort of director of a HubSpot portal, where you might have been a web person before, a rev person, something else. Everybody's all services now. And because you have this greater tool to help you, you can do more. So the org gets larger without actually physically having to get larger. But when you do bring on one more person, you're really bringing on 4 more people, right? By the time they're fully onboarded, it's a matter of the org having gone 4x because now this person's onboarded to how we do things and how we use the tools.
Yep. And
it's a good thing we're here, Bryan.
Yeah, and I would augment on that, and basically just like wrapping up my thought there is just like take everything you just said, Nico, agree completely, and it's going to shift like that 10x build and bringing on the folks 4x. It's not be focusing on what to do. The approach is going to be very much on what not to do, because the tool can run and do anything under the sun, but if you still need to be cognizant of what actually does not make sense, and that is not something the tool is necessarily going to be able to see, because that's going to be stuff that is going to come up in conversation, as well as things that happen in current events, and that's going to be the big shift that folks are going to need to be adopting, like not doing more because the tool will be doing everything. So what to limit yourself on, by extension, the tool will do.
And we'll be here to draw up those maps and follow the journey and help you learn from others that are on the same journey. At the end of the day, we're on this. And that's why we're sharing this. It's power we've experienced before that allows for many of the great things we've been about doing for a long time. Now it's here. Let's advantage. So I'm thinking about how your team uses HubSpot, what you haven't been doing that you do. Find those opportunities and let's grow. Great day, everybody.